Hello.
Anybody here not get a yearbook last year? Eric, right?
Yeah, I already read.
Okay, and you got one? Okay. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're doing, our focus will be on Streetcar Named Desire. And it is I'm just making some notes as we're going to talk about what's going on. It is where is the dash? To play by Tennessee Williams. And it takes place at an interesting point in history. It takes place in 1950s. The setting is New Orleans in the 1950s. And it's a very interesting part in history. It's an interesting part in American history because it is the sort of change and establishment of what we've talked about, what was the old South versus the new South, right? It is the growth of industrialization, it's the growth of urbanization, it's the movement of people from rural communities to cities, and it's a change in the culture in America, right? So set during the rise of the urban more culturally diverse country or cities. Okay, so a lot of times you're going to hear me talk about things like I'll say South versus the old South versus the new South. This is a very important part and transition in American society that this play is set in, right? So when we talk about the old South, we're talking about a very so it's a movement from the old South to the new South. And when we talk about that, we're talking about Southern American society. So Southern American society, there's a divide, right? Or we see it sometimes, especially it's been happening in America. We've seen it with the recent sort of civil unrest within America. We've seen it with people in America wanting to tear down statues of Confederate soldiers. You've seen it in Americans wanting to remove the Confederate flag from institutions that it really shouldn't have been there. But it's this idea of this change in the South that is happening in the 1950s. It's still continuing now. And it's really the discussion between these two types of how the South used to be. So you have the Old South, and that represents what's called the genteel tradition. And this tradition is really based on the idea it's a class-based system, right? It is extremely racist and sexist. In a society, people who are black, people of color, would not be able to achieve things within society. It is a society that celebrated and used slavery in order to achieve its wealth. It's a sexist society because in those societies, women were given very specific roles that they had to maintain, and any deviation from those roles would be considered punishable in society, right? It is an idea of sort of people-owned large plantations. Okay, to own large plantations where they get money. It was sort of this sort of idea of an aristocracy. Does anyone know what I mean by the term aristocracy? It's a small group of people who hold most of the power, right? It's usually this connection to land. Usually these are landowners. Right? So it's coming in society. There's a sense that there was a idea that people needed to behave. So people needed to adhere to good manners and behavior. So people had to act in a certain way. You had to, it's the idea of saying hello to someone in the morning. It's the idea of opening the door for a woman, taking off your hat when you enter indoors, speaking to people. Because we see it in the South, when people in the South, they may refer to someone as, instead of Ivor, they say Mr. Ivor, right? It's an idea of that there were these rules of civilization and being a gentleman or a gentle person or kind that's in the South. It is also problematic because it's also a society that traded on the treatment of other people very, very poorly, right? But still demanded that people behave in a certain way. Women are trophies to be won by men. And when I mean this way, it's just women are sort of, they don't really have an identity in the Old South. The idea is that they're supposed to be beautiful and young and virginal, and they're waiting for some man to come by and to rescue them and provide a life for them. Women need to be courted, and you need to talk to women in a very specific manner in a respectful way. Now, a lot of this is sort of focused on specifically what happens in sort of with white women, but another important point is that while it looks like these women have power, they don't really, right? They're accessories for someone to have. You have a nice big house, you have a beautiful wife who has these beautiful children who are being raised by poor black and brown people, right? So it's this idea of this sort of really structured, limited society where everyone plays a role, and if anyone steps outside that role, they get punished, right? Tracy Williams talks about this, Old South. Well, he liked the traditions in the general manner. He didn't like those rules because he was a gay man, and if there was no place for him in society. And the idea is that guys, don't remember the term chaste? Like, they're not supposed to be sexual beings. They're not supposed to want sex, have sex. They're supposed to basically be beautiful, young, virginal women until a man marries them, right? So you had people getting married when they were like in their 18s, their early 20s. That was the goal for women at this time, right? That's the old South, right? Great if you're a white dude, horrible if you're anyone else, right? It's just that's how it was. That as you go further down, as you are further away from being a white male landowner, the worse it got for you in the old South, right? Now the new South is something completely different. Okay, you see this?